I'm not gonna lie, I was excited to see Coco, but then within a few pages talking about going in through the Regal Mammoth's anus, really kind of a turnoff for me.
Gourmet number 41. Confrontation and Invasion.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the action-packed, timeless tale of Toriko. Our last chapter, of course, saw us with really just everybody meeting up. You know, Rin and Toriko meeting up with Sunny and Komatsu, and of course Sunny and Komatsu just narrowly escaping the sort of rolling Regal Mammoth that was coming down the side of the cliff. The chapter, though, ended with a bunch of those cliffs, those heavy cliffs. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember the name. Always is the case now. I call them great cliffs, but they're heavy cliffs. Kind of coming up out of the ground because they had rolled into balls and going to attack, and Coco kind of coming in, flying in on the bird, saving the day, man. He's just nailed a bunch of them in with this neurotoxin. So that was kind of like a Coco, and that's how the chapter ended. And that's kind of where we pick up, but we get a brief look into what's still going on in the Devil Athletic. That GT robot that was going into the Devil Athletic, I should say, to cross through it. We see him, and all of a sudden the pillar that he's on just starts like collapsing and everything, right? And they give us this kind of brief explanation of the Obosaurus, if you remember, that was the GT robot's master, but then Toriko beat his ass, used some battle fragrance on him, and then now he was his master. So that Obosaurus was still kind of clinging onto the side, and I guess was kind of like in some kind of daze or out of it, but then all of a sudden when it like sensed a enemy of its master Toriko, and this thing jumped ship, man. Like, it's anyway. He with the back and forth nonsense, but so he immediately tried to sense that this was an enemy of Toriko and tried to go and take it out. And then it goes and it shows this GT robot kind of like hanging on the side of the pillar by it or whatever. And then it says like, but that was all over in a second. Most of it was just from the battle fragrance anyway. And then it went and it saw a new master, So GT robot is going to be his master again, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, and they were just talking about loyalty and stuff like that. So then the next several pages are the Coco reunion. Coco kind of comes swooping in and jumps off of his bird, Kiss or whatever his name is, that cool looking crow, and jumps off of it, and and everybody's like, and Komatsu's like, oh, Coco, and Coco's like, yeah, Komatsu, seeing like what you're in over here, this sense of danger that you're around and everything else, clearly you learned nothing from before in our previous adventures. And he's like, oh, thank you for the insults, Coco. He's just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? So anyway, they get into a little loving embrace, and then he goes and Sunny's just like, He's just like, that was a beautiful entrance. As a matter of fact, it was too beautiful. So beautiful, it pisses me off, I just picture him being like so taken aback and irritated because the entrance was so grand and beautiful. So then Coco goes and he's like, yeah, Sunny, why don't you get your little feelers out there or whatever, And Toriko's like, what? He's got them retracted, And he's like, come on, why don't you go and give me a handshake for old time's sake? And he's like, oh, I would, but, remember, your skin is poison. I don't want to touch you, And he's just like, oh, wow, harsh. Great. Okay. So anyway, then they go and they're like, okay, the heavy cliffs, obviously the ones that were taken out, they're taken out with the neurotoxin. There's still more of them that are kind of standing around, but they're all kind of like, they can sense like Coco's presence and that he's a bad mamma jamma. He's somebody you don't want to mess with, right? So they're all kind of just standing around like, yeah, it's cool. You showed us your dick, it's bigger, And but then they go and they're like, but there's one that's not paying attention to that, And they show the Regal Mammoth. The Regal Mammoth is just like this giant fucking like, building-sized elephant. It's just going crazy, rearing up, And it definitely does not look good. But Coco goes and he's like, yeah, well, I took care of him too, but it's going to take a while for the toxin to actually set in, whatever sedative or type of toxin that he gave to kind of calm him down. He goes, but and then he explained about how he can actually see. He knew that Sunny's feelers were retracted because he actually has such good sight. But on top of that, he can actually see the electromagnetic like signature that's left from the actual hairs, right? So then he goes and he mentions, and what made me think about that was that then he talks about the mammoth. He's like, but that's not our only problem. I can sense an electromagnetic force in this and that. One of the GT robots, of course, inside the mammoth already, going for the jewel meat. They're just going to try to take it out of him while he's alive, right? And they're like, oh, Gourmet Corp. And then Sunny says something about Gourmet Corp. They're so ugly how they could do that, and this and that. So Sonny's like, we're going to have to go, we're going to have to go in and get it. And then Sonny's like, there's no way I'm going in there. And Coco's like, yeah, the best way would be through the anus. I'm just like, oh, God, I knew that was coming, right? Knew that was coming, So we'll just be human enemas and go right up its ass, Don't worry, he won't feel a thing. He's giant, But anyway, I don't know about you, but I don't care what the deal is and what's on the line. I don't want to go in through any animal's asshole. Okay, that's just me. Maybe there's others that think differently, but I mean, even if the world was on the line, there's not a lot you could do to get me to crawl up the asshole of some giant mammoth. And of course, Sonny's like, oh my God, I knew you'd say that. I'm not doing that, So as Sonny's going and kind of, complaining and primping himself and doing his hair and everything like that, Toriko kind of goes and sees like almost like a gleam up over him, in the sky, like obviously like something's approaching. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's a fucking GT robot, But anyway, he's like, he sees something coming, and he's like, grabs Sonny, and he's like, Sonny, get out of the way, and dives him out of the way at the last minute, dives with him, knocks him out of the way at the last minute, and a huge explosion just decimates the area where Sonny just was, right? And anyway, we wind up seeing that it's the GT robot, of course, and it's the one that, and this was neat because when they showed these GT robots, they always showed them by themselves, kind of in their different areas that they landed in, working towards the Regal Plateau. They never actually showed the size of them, so I just assumed they were all normal size, 6-7 foot tall robot things, right? But this is the one that looks kind of like Chewbacca because it's obviously it's got the fur covering stuff, and then it's got like these chains that go across that look almost like the Chewbacca bandoliers, So like if Chewbacca was an anteater and he had chains instead of like the bandolier with like bullets and grenades, this would be a spitting image of him. Just trust me on that. But so we see this thing though, and the size differential is enormous. As a matter of fact, let me find it real quick in here while I go and try to amuse and talk to everybody, which is going to be quite fun. So we go and we see that right there. The size differential is huge. It's a huge GT robot. So I don't know what you want to say. Maybe it's probably 25 feet tall, something like that. If you can see up there. So certainly not anything to be trifled with. But we wind up getting, Coco goes and he's just like, listen, man. He's like, I'll tell you what, you guys go inside the mammoth and take care of this. Because even Sonny goes and he was like, why don't we just wait for him to get the jewel meat and then come out and then we'll just ambush him and steal it, right? Like, not exactly the prettiest thing in the world, but it's effective, because he doesn't want to go in there. So Coco goes and explains about how these new GT robots, right? He didn't know they were making them this big and blah, blah, and this and that. And he's like, things have come a long way. And Toriko's like, yeah, tell me about it. I still hunt with my hands, right? With my bare hands. But Coco goes and says that these new GT robots, they can actually transmit like taste and stuff like that. So they could conceivably get a hold of the jewel meat and be able to, before they actually, once they're able to transmit the taste of it and everything else, they don't have no need for the mammoth anymore. They'll probably just kill it. So basically it's a race against time is what I'm trying to get at here. So Coco's like, all right, listen, you guys go and take care of getting the jewel meat and what have you. I'll deal with this dude right here. And they're like, no, Coco, you can't. He's so powerful and blah, and this and that. And he's like, listen, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. You guys are at less than 100% anyway. And he knows that they've already been through the ringer. And that's why Sonny was retracting his feelers. It's because he's freaking tired, man. It's because he's not 100%. And Toriko, we already know, he's admitted that he's not 100%. And it was kind of cool, too, because at the beginning of the chapter, and I forgot to mention it, but it's definitely, I think, worth mentioning. And whether you do or not is entirely up to you. But it was kind of cool because they have a picture of 3 of the 4 kings drawn right there, back to back. And I just thought that was kind of nice, having them with the GT robot in the background. But anyway, that's just so that's all here's the nonsense. So Coco goes and he says, "Okay, I'm gonna take care of everything. You guys go into the ass of the animal." And the GT robot's like, he's like, "I'm gonna take care of you. You guys won't even move a step, right?" And he opens up his anteater beak thing to go and do it. And Coco is able to go and calls in Kiss or Kiss, I think his name is Keys maybe. And I forget the name of that bird for Christ's sake. So I think it even says it in here when he calls him. I think he does. So. Oh goodness, where is it? Please, or Kiss. I'm sorry, it is Kiss. I was thinking it was Keys for some reason, but anyway, he calls the bird in. Bird comes swooping in, and is able to go and knock this thing on its ass pretty much. And what winds up happening is it still fires, but it goes and it fires into the ground, And I apologize about that. Looking that stuff up over there. God, I can't believe what I'm doing here. So that gives them the necessary time, minus Coco, of course, Rin and Komatsu and Sunny and Toriko, to kind of get moving, get moving in the right direction towards the mammoth, towards presumably the anus of the mammoth. And they're going to go take care of that. And then it goes back to Sunny, of course, and Sunny's like, in this GT Robo, it's like, oh, that's it, I will take you out and I will annihilate you and all this other stuff. And this GT robot, whoever its operator is too, I'm not sure which one's operating this particular one, but he even said, when you saw the Three Kings, he's like, this will be even, defeating you will be even like a better notch on my belt than actually getting, or trophy in the case, whatever you want to say, whatever analogy you want to use for it, be a bigger accomplishment than getting the jewel meat, So he's basically just like, I'm going to screw you guys out. He's like a bunch of rock stars here, a bunch of celebrities, I fell in a pile of shit and come out smelling like roses, So anyway, so he goes and then the chapter ends up though with Coco unwrapping his thing, unwrapping it so he can start secreting his poison and whatnot. And he's like, what makes you so sure? Because I see the shadow of death hovering above you. And I actually kind of like that, because we know too from Coco's powers and from seeing him back in the Puffer Whale arc that obviously is his power, that he can kind of foresee, the future with the auras and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of cool, and just a real nice, I thought that was a real nice give me the upper hand in the mental battle part of it, It's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I see the shadow of death hanging over you, buddy. So anyway, that goes and leads to my chapter question. What are your thoughts on this giant GT robot? As I said, it was very well done because unless I missed it, and I can go back and look in the chapters, these 4 GT robots, the way they were done, they were never shown, there was never anything near them to show the perspective of how big or small they were. So I just assumed, and I think that's what they meant to have you do, is assume that these things were all, like about a normal human size. Now, regardless, I mean, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and all those other sort of arguments, but a larger one is going to be a more formidable foe. So what are your thoughts on this 20 or 30 foot GT robot that looks like an ant-eating Chewbacca? Anyway, leave your answer to that question in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button for me if you think I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next Fun Nation.
I have a feeling that if given the opportunity, the Predator would like a crack at the GT robot, or the Regal Mammoth even for that matter.